The desert held its breath as dusk spilled across the plains, the horizon awash in bruised colors of burnt orange and violet. Dust swirled low in the cooling wind, whispering through sagebrush like secrets too old to name. Folks in the little town of Perdition Creek often said nothing stayed hidden out here. Not shame, not love, not whispers passed from porch to porch. I was younger then, though already felt the age of dust in my bones, and I remember the way gossip clung heavier than smoke from a blacksmith's forge. That was the summer Eli Cartwright brought his brides. He came riding in from the South Road, lean in the saddle, with 3 women behind him. They rode steady, their faces calm, braids dark as midnight swinging against dresses stitched by patient hands. To strangers, it might have looked like a man returning home with kinfolk. But in our town, the truth rang sharp. They were Apache women, and Eli, white rancher, son of a cattleman, had chosen them. His back stayed straight, jaw locked, like he'd braced himself for the storm of stairs waiting on Main Street. Naya, the eldest, carried her 30 years with a stillness that felt older than the desert itself. Beside her was Sohana, younger by a whisper, eyes sharp and watchful as a hawk circling the mesa. Then Tala, barely past 25, with laughter folded quiet in the corner of her mouth. As though even joy had learned to tread lightly here, the town received them like cold iron. On the church steps, lips curved into mean little smiles. At the general store, hands paused mid-sack, coins clinking sharper than they needed to. On the saloon porch, men spit tobacco and grinned. Eli tied his reins as if nothing touched him, though anyone who cared to look close could see the twitch of his hand, the stiff line at his throat. The jeering grew bold within days. A ranch hand chuckled loud enough for all to hear. "Reckon they even understand a word you say, Eli?" Laughter rippled like cheap whiskey poured down parched throats. Women clucked their tongues. Children whispered cruel echoes. Through it all, the brides did not speak. They stood straight as cedar posts, eyes cast not down but through, as though none of it had earned their notice. That silence cut deeper than any shout. I think Eli felt it too, the weight of their grace against his town's smallness. At the ranch, the quiet turned different. The house smelled of fresh bread kneaded by hands that moved as if remembering long rhythms. Horses gleamed from careful brushing. Clothes were mended before Eli had to ask. Yet between the 4 of them stretched a hush heavy as twilight. Eli sat often on the porch after sundown, hat tipped low, watching the prairie grass bend in the wind. His shame did not come from the women. No, anyone with eyes could see their dignity, but from the cruelty of voices he could not silence. Naya must have seen it in him, for sometimes her gaze lingered on his face longer than needed, not accusing, not pitying, but knowing. Connection began in gestures so small they might have been missed. One evening, after Eli returned with dust thick in his throat, Naya handed him a tin cup of water. She said nothing, yet her hand brushed his for the briefest breath of time, and something unspoken passed between them. Another night, Eli noticed Sohana's saddle strap fraying. Without comment, he repaired it by lantern light, his calloused fingers working quiet, her eyes fixed on him as though surprised at the care. Tala hummed softly in the barn as she forked hay, a tune low and round like river water slipping over stone. Eli paused in the doorway, listening longer than he meant to, caught in the spell of it. No declarations, no speeches. Just water offered, leather mended, a song drifting through rafters. The town's laughter still echoed, but within the walls of that ranch, roots of something fragile began to take hold, something neither mockery nor silence could undo. The seasons shifted, and with them something subtle began to stir at the Cartwright Ranch. What started as quiet gestures grew into rhythms of shared living, shadows falling long across the corral as Naya guided cattle with a calm hand, Sohana reading the sky for storms before Eli had even seen the clouds, Tala carrying laughter into the kitchen when the day's weight grew heavy. They moved through the land as though it belonged to them as much as they belonged to it, their presence steady, unshaken by the sideways glances that still greeted them in town. Yet gossip travels faster than wind across the mesa. By autumn, whispers sharpened into knives. Some said Eli had lost his pride. Others muttered darker things, mutinous words that carried old grudges like tinder waiting for flame. Still he kept his head high, though inside him the shame gnawed, not of the women he'd chosen, but of the smallness that lived in his neighbors. At night he'd find Naya watching him, her eyes lit by lamplight, as if reminding him wordlessly, their silence was not weakness. It was waiting. The moment of reckoning came on a Sunday afternoon when the town gathered for the harvest social. Sunlight spilled through dust as wagons rolled in, pies carried beneath gingham cloths, fiddles tuning on the porch of the church hall. Eli arrived with his brides beside him, their dresses different now, emerald, sky blue, and burgundy, colors catching the late light like embers. The crowd shifted, murmurs thick as flies, laughter started soft, then grew bold. "Brought the whole harem, did you, Cartwright?" Someone jeered. Eli's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Onlookers smirked, whispers rippling through the benches and stalls. A man, drunk on cider and his own cruelty, barked the words the town had waited for. "Do they even understand us?" The air fell still. Even the fiddles faltered. Children stared, women gasped, men chuckled under their breath. Eli's chest burned, shame pressing against his ribs, like a hand trying to crush the breath from him. Before he could speak, Naya stepped forward. Her hands folded neatly, her voice rose. Not loud, but clear enough to silence the square. "I understand you well," she said. The English rolled from her tongue with elegance, each syllable cut fine as crystal. "I was taught by nuns in Santa Fe who told me words could be bridges, not walls." The crowd froze. Sohana's eyes gleamed, and she followed. Her tone was sharper, a cadence honed on scripture and verse. "I've read Whitman by candlelight, though I doubt many here could recite him." Murmurs broke out, half awe, half shame. Then Tala, the youngest, spoke with a smile that softened even the hardest face in the square. "And I thank you," she said gently, "for the bread you've shared this evening. Hospitality is a gift worth honoring, no matter how it is offered." The silence that followed was deeper than any gunshot. Laughter curdled into stillness. For the first time, the women's voices carried louder than mockery, yet they bore no spite, only grace. Eli stood taller then, not because their English proved anything, but because their dignity had always been unshakable. The shame he carried melted into pride so fierce it nearly brought him to his knees. The townsfolk shifted uncomfortably, their smirks erased. Their own ignorance laid bare beneath the late sun. From that night, something changed in Perdition Creek. The women were not suddenly embraced. No, prejudice does not vanish with a single word, but the laughter stopped. The cruel whispers fell quieter. And for those who had witnessed the moment, a seed of respect took root, whether they wished it or not. At the ranch, the air felt different. Eli watched them by lamplight, Naya's steady hands stitching, Sohana's sharp gaze following every flame flicker, Tala's humming weaving peace into the night. He realized then what he should have known all along. They had not needed his protection. They had brought strength into his life, teaching him to stand unbowed not by stubbornness, but by dignity. I look back now, older and softened by years, and I remember that night more than any gunfight or cattle drive. The night the town's laughter turned into silence, and silence into awe, and to you, listening now, carrying your own burdens of judgment or scorn, remember this: strength often speaks not with fists or fury, but with stillness. Like rivers carving stone, like flowers blooming in the harshest desert, dignity endures where no one believes it can. And when the moment comes, it will speak in a voice so steady, the whole world will hush to listen.